How does TWIA pay claims? Like any other insurance provider, the Texas Windstorm Insurance Association, or TWIA, collects premiums, issues insurance policies, and pays claims. After a storm hits the Texas coast, the amount TWIA pays for its policyholders' claims may be more than the amount TWIA has available from collected premiums. To ensure TWIA has access to enough money to pay for claims after a catastrophic event, like a hurricane, the Texas legislature has designed TWIA's funding structure in a way that provides access to several sources of money, not just policyholder premiums. These different sources of money are layered in what is called TWIA's funding stack. The funding stack is composed of policy premium payments, a savings account known as the Catastrophe Reserve Trust Fund, public securities, insurance member company assessments, and reinsurance. We'll explain all of these in a moment. There are laws in place that determine how much money is in each layer of the stack, when and how TWIA may use money from each layer, and how TWIA is allowed to spend the money. Before we move on, it's important to know that although TWIA's funding stack and the way it's used is established by law, TWIA is not a state agency and does not receive taxes or state funds to help pay claims. TWIA is a not-for-profit organization, and, by law, it may only use its funding stack to pay claims and other expenses specifically stated by law. Now that we've got that established, here's how the TWIA funding stack works. When a storm hits the Texas coast, TWIA pays claims for the property damage that is covered by its policies. That is, damage caused by wind and hail. The first layer of money in the funding stack used to pay these claims is premiums and other revenue. This is the money that policyholders have paid TWIA for their policies for this year. How big or small that amount is depends on TWIA's policy rates and how many policies it has. When the money TWIA has collected that year runs out, TWIA must use the next layer in the funding stack. The next layer of money used to pay claims is the Catastrophe Reserve Trust Fund, also known as the CRTF. This is the money that TWIA has saved up each year and deposited into savings. The CRTF account is held by the Texas State Comptroller. The CRTF's balance is also real cash, just like premiums. How much money is in the CRTF is directly tied to how much premium TWIA takes in over the year, or years, the amount of expenses it has to cover, and how often TWIA is impacted by catastrophic events that require using the money to pay claims. Adequate insurance rates are one way to help the CRTF grow more quickly. Another way is tied to Mother Nature. Each year that the Texas coast doesn't have a severe storm, the CRTF grows. For example, in 2017, before Hurricane Harvey struck, the CRTF had a $745 million balance. Much of that is because the Texas coast hadn't experienced a major storm in several years. When the CRTF runs out, the next layer of funding must be used. After the CRTF, TWIA moves into using borrowed money, also known as public securities. This layer of the funding stack, called Class 1 public securities, totals $500 million. The public securities are bonds issued by TWIA. These bonds are essentially a loan to TWIA, and, by law, must be repaid. If TWIA does not collect enough money through policy premiums to pay back the bonds, it is required by law to request permission from the Texas Insurance Commissioner to bill its policyholders an extra fee. The extra fee, or surcharge, is additional money on top of their premium. TWIA must use the money collected from surcharges to repay the bonds. If the cost of claims is more than the amount TWIA has in the CRTF and the first $500 million layer of public securities, TWIA will move into using the first layer of member company assessments. Member company assessments are how insurance companies in Texas contribute to paying TWIA claims and operating expenses. Any insurance company that writes property and casualty insurance in Texas with a few exceptions, is required by law to be a member company of Texas Windstorm Insurance Association and can be assessed by TWIA for their portion of up to $500 million for the payment of claims. The next layers in TWIA's funding stack include 4 alternating layers of public securities and member company assessments at $250 million each. Once these funding sources are used, TWIA gets to the reinsurance layer. Reinsurance is the last layer of the TWIA funding stack. Reinsurance is basically insurance for insurance companies. If a year has enough storms or one severe enough storm that TWIA uses all available cash, bonds, and assessments, TWIA must start using reinsurance. The reinsurance will pay TWIA, and that money will be used to pay policyholders' claims. This funding stack is in place to make sure TWIA has enough money from enough different sources to fulfill its promise of paying claims after a storm. As you can see, many circumstances affect the amount of money available in TWIA's funding stack and how much money TWIA will have to borrow or assess to pay policyholders' claims. Such factors include how much TWIA collects each year in premiums, the frequency, location, and size of major storms impacting the Texas coast, and the cost of property repair resulting in large claim payments. To learn more about TWIA's funding, please visit the TWIA website at TWIA.org.